Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this next series of videos about the DNS, we will be discussing its structure and hierarchy. So let's begin. So the first types of servers are known as root DNS servers, and these are the top level servers in our hierarchy because there are the least amount of them actually, because there are only 13 of them globally, and it is the starting point for being able to translate a domain name. And they are the contact of last resort server for any that are not able to resolve a domain name anywhere else, and they have global distribution and very high fault tolerance because, like I said, there are not many of them and they are global. They need to be able to work very well with each other. So the next type of servers are called top-level domain or TLD servers. And what these are, they're any types of servers that are associated with the type of URL, whether it ends in .com, .org, .edu, .gov. There's several of them. And there's also country-specific ones, such as like .uk for the United Kingdom, .ca for Canada, .jp for Japan, .fr for France, .au for Australia. The list goes on. There are many TLD servers. They route their queries to authoritative servers, and this is because authoritative servers are below them on the hierarchy, and these are responsible for very specific domain names. So getting into a little bit more about that, authoritative servers are responsible for hostname to IP mappings because, like I said, these are the company's own DNS servers that are very specific to them. Some examples of registries that work with authoritative servers are Route 53, which is managed by Amazon AWS, GoDaddy, Google Domains. There's a lot. And basically, all you really want to know about them is that these include any service that manages a DNS record for that domain name. So there's going to be one of these for pretty much everything, any server you visit. So in order to understand this hierarchy a little bit better, here's a visual. The root DNS servers are at the top. As we see, these root servers are broken up into the .com, .org, .edu. Like I said, there's .gov. There's so many of them. And those types of servers are called the top-level domain, or TLDs. And from those, we see here, .com can be split up into yahoo.com, amazon.com, youtube.com would be another one. loom.com could be another one. We have our .orgs, so you could do pbs.org. There's so many of these. .edu, New York University, NYU.edu, University of Massachusetts, UMass.edu. For the one I go to, Concordia Chicago, would be cuchicago.edu. The list goes on. But as we see, the authoritative servers are specific to a domain name that is in the DNS. And all of those authoritative servers make up TLD servers, which have to do with the types of URLs and the types of websites that you're visiting. And all of them together will make up your global root DNS servers. So next, moving on, are some DNS queries, and the first type of them are going to be an iterative query. So these queries basically just reply to the user of what server you want to be able to contact in order to resolve a query. So as we see, here's an example diagram. We have a requesting host. Let's say we're starting at engineering.New York University, and we want to get to the computer science at University of Massachusetts. Let's say we want to move from one to the next. So you see here, we're going to first go through our local DNS server, which the local DNS server is not part of the hierarchy of the DNS as we see from that diagram. It's not there. And this really is just a local DNS server that's associated with your own computer. So like the computer that you're watching this video on or that I'm presenting this video from, they each have their own local DNS server that stores data that pertains to that computer specifically. So it's my own server basically. So first off, if we want to make a query, we start off here at the root DNS server. If you remember, I said that this is the first server that we want to start at to be able to resolve a query. So we first go to the root DNS server. And if it's not able to resolve the query, we see from here, step 3, it returns back to me and says, hey, go to the server that's lower than me on the hierarchy, which is going to be the TLD server for the diagram. The TLD server is below the root on the hierarchy. So next up, if it's not able to resolve it, we go from the requesting host here to the TLD server. If it's not able to resolve it here, it tells the user, comes back to the user and says, hey, I was also not able to resolve this query. Please move on to the next type of server. And the next type of server is going to be the last type of server that's going to help us to be able to resolve this. And that will be the authoritative servers that we went over, because those are the bottom on the hierarchy. And most of the time, this is going to be able to resolve it for us because these pertain to specific domain names. So because Gaia.cs.University of Massachusetts, UMass.edu is a very specific domain name, it's going to be able to resolve that query for me, come back, and the local DNS server will give me the final answer for the requesting host, and it will get me the website that I want to move to. So because this URL here, gaia.cs.umass.edu, is a very specific URL. This is going to pertain to that server's authoritative server, because it's specific for that company. It's going to resolve it for me, send the answer back to my local DNS server, and also be stored in the web cache for my computer, which in the next section we will get into web caching. And the local DNS server will finally give me the final answer. As we see from step 8, it'll come back to the requesting host and give me the final answer and get me to the website I want to go to. It's key to note, though, that you could be able to resolve a name or a query that you want to get to. You don't have to go to the authoritative server every single time. Most of the time, you're going to have to, just because it's, like I said, it's very specific. And usually when you're searching for something on the internet, you want something very specific that you're looking for. But because that's not the case all the time, it is pretty much every time. Because it's not the case all the time, it is key to note that it does not have to go there. So if I get a query resolved on the TLD server, it's going to return to me right away. But either way, no matter where the query is resolved, what level of hierarchy server this is on, the local DNS server will give me that final answer and return it back to me and get me to where I want to go. So the next type of query is called a recursive query. And what this means is that it basically just puts the burden of the workload on the first server that is contacted. So as we see from this diagram, we start off with our local DNS server. The query that we make is going to go through here first. And we're going to first move right here from step 1 to step 2. The local DNS server is going to contact the root server because, like I said before, the root server is the first server that is going to help us to be able to resolve a query that we make in the DNS. So what that does, if the root DNS server is not able to resolve it for me, it will move to the next server here, step 3. It'll go to the server that is below it on the hierarchy, which is going to be the TLD server, the top level domain. And if it's able to resolve that query, it will send it back to me. But if not, as we see, this server that has been contacted, it's going to contact the authoritative server, which is going to be the lowest on the DNS hierarchy. And once it gets resolved, like I said, this is going to be the case most of the time because, like I said, when you're searching for something on the internet, you want something very specific. And that is going to go hand in hand with the authoritative DNS server because it is a company's own server. I cannot stress that enough, how important that is to understand that. And once it's able to resolve the query, the authoritative server will go back to the TLD server with the answer, which is then going to go to the root DNS server, and then go to the local server, and then back to the user. So one thing that's really important to note, the similarity between these two, is that the local DNS server is going to be able to give us that final answer both times. No matter which way and which approach you use for a query, the local DNS server is going to always give it the client or the host that we see right here that's denoted by this computer. It's going to give it the final answer and get us to where we want to go. But what makes recursive queries less scalable and less reliable is that because each server is contacting itself and it hasn't completed a process yet, it's going to be able to put a very heavy workload on these top hierarchy levels because, like I said, it's going to be contacting one to next to the next to the next. With an iterative query, it's either going to tell me it's able to resolve it or it's not, and it's going to be done. These keep working on every server until it's complete. So it puts a very high workload on these levels, which makes it less efficient. So iterative is more efficient, but these both work, obviously. So a little quiz question going over this. In a DNS query, who is responsible for finding the final answer? The root server, the local server, the TLD server, or the authoritative server? So like I said, both iterative and recursive queries are different. One thing that is key to note is that local DNS server, and we see the answer here, the local DNS server is going to give us that final answer both times because it's going to get the final answer from whatever server on our hierarchy is able to resolve it. So thank you very much for watching. The next video, we will be discussing the caching of DNS. Have a great day.